Kia ora, welcome to the Guerin Report on a Monday night. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to join us for what's been a massive news week for New Zealand racing. What's coming up on your show? We're going to talk about this horse, that's Savaglee. We're going to talk about him in a second because he's staying here. We're going to talk to Andrew Castles because, well, all the Waikato racing may not be staying where it's actually been. It might be heading somewhere else. That's a really big story and a complicated story. And then we're going to also launch the Karaka catalogue for January as we farewell the Ready to Run sales. By the way, that's the Japan Cup. James McDonald wasn't in the Japan Cup, but he still kind of won it. We'll get to that a little bit later on with the highlights out of Japan. So much coming up on your show this evening. Let's start with the big news coming out this morning. The New Zealand 2000 Guineas winner Savaglee, a mammoth offer from Australia for him, has been turned down by the Oak Stud and Oak Stud owner Dick Caraman. Here he is. You saw this race on Trackside and Trackside Premier 2 weeks ago. This is Savaglee absolutely spanking them in the 2000 Guineas. The offer came in from a major Australian stud late last week. Dick Caraman, talking to his racing manager Rick Williams, turned down the offer. They said, look, it was huge, but we are going to roll the dice. That is great to hear. Roll the dice with him through to the Australian Guineas. That's at Flemington on March the 1st. So they believe, and these are Rick's words, if we can win the Australian Guineas, we will double his value. Now, I estimate a horse like him who wins the Australian Guineas is worth between $15 and $20 million. If we cut that in half, we're thinking that offer was somewhere between 6 to 8 to 9 to 10 for Savaglee, but they've decided to roll the dice. That is very brave. But that means if he's going to be at Flemington, or that's the plan, nothing is guaranteed, for March the 1st, he won't be here. This is the market for the NZB Kiwi, our slot race. It's going to be huge, regardless of who is there. 3.5 million at Ellerslie on March the 8th. You could technically race in both, but he's not going to. So if Savaglee's summer goes well, and they take him there to try and win the Australian Group 1, he won't be turning up here. Now, Rick Williams did say, if something went wrong, if we missed a lead-up race, yep, we might try and retool things and go to the Kiwi if there was still a slot spare. And if there's a slot spare and Savaglee's available, well, he might turn up. But more than likely, that's not what they're aiming at. The Guerin Report understands the other co-favourite here, Aliana, is also not being aimed at this race. So things can change, but those top two at this stage aren't going to be heading to the Kiwi. Let's wind the page down, see who else is in play. By the way, I don't think Bellatrix Star will be there either. I think they'll stick to the sprints for her. Here's the second page. Maybe some of these horses start to come into play. The Guerin Report again understands that Prosegur, the horse there who's rated a $21 chance after the win recently, has been sought after by a few slot holders. So that NZB Kiwi, fascinating, so many moving parts. Let's go back about 4 or 5 weeks. The Karaka Million 3-year-old also sees Savaglee as the favourite. Again, Rick Williams confirming we are unlikely to head there. Trainers prefer going 1200, and this night there's a 1200 not only the railway, but there's also the El Manzor Trophy, into 1400, like the BCD Sprint, then 3 weeks later into the Australian Guineas. So it's not impossible, because we saw Legato a couple of seasons ago beaten in this race and able to win the Australian Guineas, but it's not the path they're intending going down. So where do we see Savaglee next? Well, there is a small chance, only small, he could head to the Telegraph. That's now on the first Saturday in January. So he's not in the market for the Telegraph, and it would be a surprise to see him turn up there. More likely is the railway. Who would he be up against in the Telegraph? Well, you saw them all at Counties on Saturday. We saw Luberon, we saw Crocetti, we saw Waitak, and all those horses. Like, it'd be brutal taking on these horses fresh up, particularly if you're looking to embellish a stallion career. By the way, Luberon's embellish. See what I did there? By embellish? Okay. Maybe not. Anyway, they're all going to head to the Telegraph, so they'll be there fit and ready. I doubt Savaglee will be there, but he could be on Karaka Millions Night, potentially in a railway, but I'm thinking more the El Manzor Trophy over 1,200 metres. Now, if he goes to the railway, he would jump into this market really, really tight, maybe even at the top of it. But Alabama Lass, we were thinking might go to the El Manzor this night. If Savaglee goes there, does she prefer to go to the railway? Lots of permutations coming out of the non-sale of Savaglee, but at the moment, he is favourite for 2 races, which they are telling us he will not be going to. I don't want you to waste your money. Doesn't mean he won't be there, but that's not the plan for now the most valuable horse in New Zealand. By the way, on the subject of value of horses, congratulations to NZB and the ready-to-run buyers and sellers last week. A magnificent sale last week, a $1.65 million horse. Well, the game never stops. Today, this afternoon at 4 p.m, the catalogue launched for the big sale, the Book 1 and Book 2 of the Karaka yearling sales. It's coming up in late January. After you watch the show, don't go anywhere yet. After you watch the show, you can jump on nzb.co.nz to see where the next crop of wonderful horses are going to be going and who's going to end up being on the market in January at Karaka. News coming out last week, some of the biggest news in New Zealand racing in recent years, that the members of Waikato Thoroughbred Racing have voted to explore further looking into building a super hub of a racetrack in the Waikato region, which would eventually, if it eventuates, mean the sale of Te Rapa, Cambridge and the Waipa track. It is a huge story. We speak to Andrew Castles, the Chief Executive of Waikato Thoroughbred Racing, about the detail. Well, Andrew Castles, thank you for joining us. There's a lot to unpack here in the vote approved last week by the members of Waikato Thoroughbred Racing. So far, what have they voted to go ahead with?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, look, the members on Monday night that attended the AGM voted to endorse the direction of the project control group, and that direction is to de-risk the process around trying to put together a racing and training greenfield. So if you simplify that, it's the first step is finding a piece of land. So that's the process we're working towards. Is we've engaged Baileys in the local area, and we are looking to find a piece of land on which to de-risk the process of then progressing to build a new Greenfields Racing and Training Centre.
We'll get to that part shortly. What does de-risk mean? Does it mean to find the land and then find a way of paying for it or financing it?
Well, all of those things, but I suppose you wind it back a step as well, is to do the due diligence on the piece of land that we find. It'd be nothing worse than having a wonderful piece of land, settling on it, and then finding out that you couldn't build a racecourse on it. You know, there's the consenting process to work through, but before that, we need to do the geotech work. We need to make sure that all of that stuff is done. We'll have a criteria to select the land, and then it'll be a matter of working through a whole lot of due diligence to make sure that a racecourse will work on the piece of land that we've selected. How
big a parcel of land is Waikato Thoroughbred Racing going to need to make all the dreams around this facility come true?
Yeah, that's important because not only would the vision be to have a wonderful racing and training centre, but with that you would want to have the ability for trainer allotments. I suppose you use examples like Pakenham, Cranbourne, where there are significant trainers establishments right on course right there. So that would be one part of it. But equally, I think that a part of this is to have the requisite businesses that go with racing. You'd want to hope that you would have a wonderful veterinarian facility as part of it. You'd have farriers. You'd like to think that a training establishment, whether that be apprentice jockeys, people into the industry in various fields. So you'd have that type of thing there as well. So what we've said in our brief to Baileys is that we wouldn't want to be any less than 125 hectares. So that would sort of be the minimum. Look, we've got a really open mind though. It might be that there's a significant significantly bigger piece of land that that becomes available in an area that works for us, then we would look to that. So we're not restricted in saying it has to be between this and this size, but we have said we don't think that what we envisage and what our vision would be would work on a piece of land less than 125 hectares.
I imagine over the time frame we're talking about, a lot's going to change in the next 8 to 10 years. For example, a trainer who lives at Te Rapa and has boxes at Te Rapa, or one who lives in Cambridge and has boxes at Cambridge, would you be expecting they would keep their property, for example, even their own house at a Cambridge, or are you hoping to potentially have people living around this area and making it a racing precinct? Because obviously, if they're living there and the horses are on the track, it's a lot easier. If the horses are being trucked in from other areas, it's more inconvenient.
I don't think the trucking of the horse, I think you will always have some horses come in because, again, we've said that the area that we're going to look to try and identify a piece of land is in a triangle between sort of Hamilton, Cambridge and Te Awamutu. So there would be, where we find a piece of land and we're hypothesising down the track, as you say, there would be some people that would still bring horses to the track. But absolutely it would be our vision that there would be the ability to have horses stabled on site, for want of a better term, and that whether as part of that there is accommodation, yeah, I would expect so. Look, as you would think that to fund something like this, we would need to divest of our assets. So some of those trainers that are around the Cambridge track in particular I would think benefit from the fact that the Cambridge track would be sold.
Okay, the new facility, and we have to go forward thinking this is going to happen, and we hope it does, would it have both a turf track and potentially a synthetic track which was raceable on? Yeah,
that's what we're thinking at the moment. Absolutely. There's I think that the synthetic tracks certainly have a real place in the winter in particular. If you look at the ability to train on them when other tracks are not able to be trained on, I think that's a real value. Equally, it takes a lot of pressure, some of those midwinter race meetings off grass tracks. If we were continuing to race on grass, just to imagine that those 11 or 12 race meetings that were at Cambridge this winter had to be raced at the likes of Rotorua, Tauranga, even maybe another one at Te Rapa around those grass tracks. I'm just not sure that they would cope. So yes, the vision would be that there would be a synthetic track as part of it as a racing and training tool.
Would we have the ability to talk to the trainers? For example, the new mainland China facility built by the Hong Kong Jockey Club has an uphill training track, which is very much in vogue in some parts of Europe as well. Would we have the ability to say, is this something you want? Will the trainers be asked what a purpose-built facility should look like for them?
Oh, look, absolutely. I think that variety and being able to mix up a horse's work is something that you talk to trainers about, and you know, you use Cranbourne as an example. I know that Mark Walker has talked of the ability to ride through some sand type hills and some sand rides and those types of things. So that works. Not sure there'll be a beach quite where we're going to be building or sand, but you're right. The ability to have some different, rather than just a flat round surface, something to stimulate the horse's mind, something like an uphill gallop. Absolutely. Look, I'm not saying there will be one because that would be dependent a little bit on what piece of land we're able to buy. But I think variety is something. And to your point about including some trainers, we would be crazy not to draw on the experience of many trainers, and a lot of them within our jurisdiction, a lot of them that train at Waikato Thoroughbred Racing venues now. I'm sure we will call on their experience. A lot of them have travelled horses all over the world and have experience of many different training facilities.
Money is crucial to this whole development. So obviously you have the ability to sell the other 3 racetracks if this all goes ahead in time. What about financing from next week or whenever we find a track, and even the starting of this process, which will cost money, through to when those tracks are sold? Is it your responsibility at Waikato Thoroughbred Racing? Is it the responsibility of NZTR to help with loans, to help get this process rolling? Because I think when anybody makes a property development of any sort, financing or running out of money are 2 crucial aspects to getting it completed.
Absolutely, and that's one of the parts of de-risking, getting to that point. Look, I think when you think of the magnitude of this commitment, this undertaking, it in my mind is probably bigger than Waikato Thoroughbred Racing. This is something to future-proof the industry across New Zealand, really. I mean, Waikato is the heartbeat, is the centre of racing in New Zealand, and if we can pull together this facility to look after the next 3 or 4 generations, so that they've got a purpose-built, modern facility on which the industry to grow, then I think that becomes an industry issue. So we would absolutely look for the support and the undertaking of organisations like NZTR to help us. And I'd have to say we've had wonderful support through the TAB Rejuvenation Fund to fund. We've done a lot of work in the background and a lot of detailed work to make sure we get to this point to be able to recommend to our members that the Greenfield approach was the right one. We looked at a variety of mixes. We looked at the status quo and we looked at maybe doing Waipa up, changing the way that was and having that. But when we came back to it, and after a whole lot of work and a whole lot of different reasons came together, that the Greenfield was the right approach. So their Rejuvenation Fund has been crucial in being able to fund some of that. NZTR have a representative on the working group, on the project control group. They are involved at that level. So that, I think, underpins how important that they see this project is for the future. So to simplify the answer to your question, yes, there will be working with significant organisations to try and get to a point where, should we recommend to our members that we proceed, that we've got everything in place to do that.
How important to Waikato Thoroughbred Racing is accessibility? I've been involved in harness racing for a lot of my adult life, and they've moved 2 major tracks in Australia out of the city. People no longer go. Are you concerned if you move the heart of Waikato racing 25 kilometres from Hamilton, that people may be reluctant to go to the races?
Yeah, that must be of a consideration. On the flip side to that, one of the reasons why Cambridge is ultimately in a decade's time, in my opinion, going to be untenable is because it's going to be built around. If you go down Albergaldi Way now, the number of houses that are going in there, and then with that, the amount of traffic that's now on the road for horses to be crossing the road, walking down the road. If there used to be, and these numbers won't be right, but if there used to be 8 or 10 cars an hour early of a morning, and now there's 50 or 60, all of a sudden the risks associated with that are greater. So we believe that that's one of the reasons why being built around will make Cambridge a risk into the future. So when you're looking for a new site, you must have the vision of what that looks like in the next 10, 20 years. And if you go to that triangle that we talk about, the Peacock development in Hamilton is moving that way. So it's moving out the new bridge that's gone in, and that huge development there is moving that south way. So if you were able to find a piece of land that maybe was closer to that, as time went on, you would build that way. Cambridge will increase out this way. So I think whilst mindful that you don't want to take it away from the populace now, you also have to have a vision of where that population growth is going to be over the next decade or two.
Let's talk about governance, because the Waikato Thoroughbred Racing run race meetings really well, and they run them at 2 different tracks and the training of horses. But this is a different type of project. So you and the board are charged with overseeing something now, whereas in the next 8 to 10 years you're going to be charged with overseeing something completely differently. So what sort of expertise do you bring on board, and do you almost set up a secondary governance structure where there is the property and project development side to Waikato Thoroughbred Racing and the racing and event side?
Yeah, look, I think that makes absolute sense right now. There's a project control group that consists of representatives of the Waikato Thoroughbred Racing Board, as I said, a representative of NZTR, and we have an independent chairman who is leading the project, Steve Bramley, who has been involved right through. Now, when we get through the next stage and that recommendation to a special general meeting in September or October of next year, I would imagine that part of that recommendation will be the formation of a special group that you talk of, a management group, a project group that would take charge of any future development. Because look, it is a specialist area. There's examples of sporting organisations that have got it right. There's plenty of those. those, but there are also examples where organisations haven't got it right, and that we...
Alexandra Park.
Yeah, and we don't want to be in a situation where we put in jeopardy the future of racing, because in reality this is a massive undertaking. Like if we get to that point, it's very exciting. I mean, to be involved in something that would see a brand new Greenfield's fit for purpose built at the same time as needing to work through divesting of the three assets that we have, the three massive assets that we have. That's something that, it's not my skill set, and I'm smart enough to understand some of it and learning all the time, but there are people that specialise in those areas.
What's the timeline? There's people watching this who think this is exciting, but they don't care that much, because what they want to know is, when will I be going to a new racetrack? So in a dream scenario, and I know we're throwing darts at a very big green dartboard, but from now to when there is a race being held at this new complex, if in fact all of this happens, in my head, I don't know why there's an 8 to 10 year sort of area. Is that what you're thinking?
Look, I think that would be achievable. Should everything fall the right way. I mean, I'd love to think that by the first quarter we've identified a piece of land that we can do that work on. The first quarter of next year, we have an aim to be at a special general meeting to our members with a distinct business plan of how we can then proceed by September or October of next year. And then once we're doing that, then your consenting process is a long and involved process. I know that there's a lot of work government-wise to shorten up those consenting things, but the reality is there's so much work to be done in the water space. You've got fertile lands issues to work through, all of those types of things. So from a consenting viewpoint, there's also when is the optimum time to sell assets that we have. We must work back from there, and there's a date where Cambridge flicks from a reserve residential into a more residential zoning. It's currently in the Waipa District Council's reserve. So there's those dates to work through. We must be very mindful of optimising, should we get to that point, of optimising what we can get for the venue so that we can clearly pay for the new one.
It's an exciting time, Butch. Congratulations, first of all, to the board for having this vision and for starting the process. It's got a lot of moving parts, and I know that you would like to keep the industry aware of what's going on, because it is such a big project, maybe the biggest in the history of New Zealand racing. We'll be leaving you alone for a couple of weeks. We'll be bothering you more next year on the Guerin Report, Butch, to keep people updated on this. Waikato Cup is just around the corner. Good luck for that. I know it's a hell of a big time with a big Christmas party down there in Hamilton, and obviously heading through to Legends time in the middle of February, mate. But thank you for being so open about things, and yes, onwards and upwards for Waikato Thoroughbred Racing.
Thanks, Michael, and you're right, it is extremely important. It's an industry investment, it's an industry issue. It's not just Waikato Thoroughbred Racing. You know, there's young trainers, there's sons and daughters of trainers now that want to have a future in this industry, and it's incumbent on us to get it right for those sons and daughters of people, not necessarily just trainers, people that want to be trainers. We have to give them the opportunity. They have to see that our vision is the right one and that there's a future for them to be involved in it. It's bloody exciting, daunting, like it's a massive undertaking, but look, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, and they're not, because it's not easy, but we will be as open and transparent, and that's why we've gone down this process with the land. We didn't want to just sort of skulk around and try and find a piece of land and then be open to accusations of, oh, they only took that bit of land because it was someone's mate. Look, we've been very transparent, we're being open, we're saying, look, if you've got a bit of land that you think would work for a racecourse somewhere in that area, please let us know, because we're extremely interested to have a look at that and then work through a due diligence process. So look, thanks for having us. It's wonderful to be able to update people. It's something, Greenfields in the Waikato was a recommendation of the Masara report. It's been talked about since then. There's been various reasons why it hasn't progressed, but this is a massive step in the right direction. This is a massive step forward for a vision that's been sort of floating around for a long time, but hopefully it can now materialise.
We thank Butch and Waikato Thoroughbred Racing for being so open and transparent about the start of this process. It's only the start, but if you happen to have a spare 125 hectares lying around the backyard and you feel like having a racetrack built there, get a hold of Bailey's. We're going to keep you updated on this amazing project and huge story for New Zealand racing on coming weeks, months and potentially even years here on trackside. Last night, one of the historic great races that New Zealanders feel an attachment to, the Japan Cup, was run in Tokyo. Of course, the race once won by famously Horlicks, this time won by Dudus, which is on the outside, slow pace for a Japanese major race. And Yutaka Taki sat back there, looped them from the 700, came from last, so a hell of a performance from the winner, considering the pace. That's Yutaka Taki, who's Japan's favourite jockey. That's his 5th Japan Cup at the age of 55. So a wonderful horse, an even more wonderful rider. What's important to New Zealand also is the fact that Ryan Moore was riding in the race and was unplaced on Auguste Rodin. Now, that was a race which went towards the Longines Jockey of the Year worldwide competition. It's a points-based comp. Because he was unplaced, our James McDonald, who we started the Guerin report with way back about 3 months ago, is officially the world's leading jockey for 2024. Congratulations to J-Mac. He wins on that big race points-based system. Once Ryan was unplaced, James can't be beaten. How did he celebrate? Well, with a double last night at Sha Tin. J-Mac doing James things. We'll be up to see him in a couple of weeks on the Guerin Report for Hong Kong International Race Meeting, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time. We'll be there live for you to get all the action and, of course, talk to our new New Zealand World Champion. There's been so much going on. We haven't really caught up with the little man, little Mickey G from Cambridge Stud. We want to keep you updated on him, but there's been so much big news. We've had to just put him on the back burner, but here he is. A couple of weeks ago, our camera crew and we headed down. Roger Laxon from Cambridge Stud helped us get all these wonderful shots. Here is the Sword of State brother to Kerwolf. He is an absolute beauty. Yep. I fell in love with him, just like so many people do when they see their horse for the first time. Well, he's our horse, and we're going to keep you updated on how he goes and all the cool things happening in his life. And we went down there for a chat, which turned into a whole episode with Brendan and Joe Lindsay. It was so fascinating to talk to them about Cambridge Stud and their philosophies and thoughts and plans for the wonderful nursery down there. That's Mickey G. There's more of him coming up. The other Mickey G, the cute Mickey G, coming up on coming weeks. That's a few weeks away on the Guerin Report, but it was a real buzz to meet the little man down there at Cambridge Stud. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Massive news coming out of NZTR this week. So next week we will have a show dedicated to that news as we sit down one-on-one with Bruce Sharrock. That's the Guerin Report for a Monday night. Bruce Sharrock next Monday on Trackside at 8 p.m.